You're most likely throwing half your real estate investor marketing money away and you don't even know it. Hi, I'm Jeff Charlton with REIPrintMail. Let me explain what I mean by that last statement. I've been saying for years that if you're not using direct mail as part of your comprehensive marketing strategy, you're leaving money on the table. Well, I'm going to add a new chapter to that concept right now. If you're not using REISmartCall to answer incoming calls from any type of marketing effort, you're leaving even more money on the table, and let me explain. Have you ever thought about how well you handle incoming calls from your marketing? If you're an investor spending thousands of dollars each month on paid marketing, there's a pretty good chance that you're throwing at least half of that money out the window due to your poor handling of incoming calls. When I say poor handling, many investors will think that I'm not talking to them. But I bet you didn't know that on average, investors only answer 45% of incoming marketing calls. Yeah, you heard that right, 45%. How do I know that? Because we handle mail for thousands of investors all over the country and mail millions of mailers each month. A large percentage of that mail goes through our REI Complete division, where we track incoming calls for investors who answer their own calls. We know if a call gets answered or not. I'm telling you that 45% is a real average. And even more surprising, the larger investors who mail big numbers tend to have an even worse track record. Well, how can that be? Think about this. If you have in-house people on the phone, chances are the person does more than just sit around waiting for calls to come in for marketing efforts. They're doing other stuff. They're making calls. If a call comes in while they're busy on another call, they can't answer. If you're a larger investor who spends big dollars on ads and does a lot of deals, your people are even busier and you have more calls coming in. This all adds up to a low call answer rate. And then there is coverage. We know from our statistics that calls come in hot and heavy starting at 7 a.m. and go to about 6 p.m. And although it's a smaller volume, calls also come in an hour or two both before and after that time period. That's 14 hours a day, Monday through Saturday. Do you have employees working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week? Most investors do not. Even if it's only a few calls you miss, those missed calls could be missed deals. Put both these issues together and you get an answer rate of less than 50%. And then there's another fact that I bet you didn't consider. If you don't answer within a few rings when someone calls from your ads or mailers, many callers just hang up and do not leave a voicemail. They just go on to the next investor who solicited them and call them. So if you don't catch them live when they call, there's a good chance the next guy they call will answer and might close that deal. Even if they do leave a voicemail message, they still might call the next investor. How well do you or your team follow up on these missed call voicemails or hang-ups? Our statistics show that most investors are not good on any type of follow-up, and even if they do, they might try once or twice, but that is about as far as it goes. Even if you're good at callbacks, it generally takes 2 or 3 attempts before you can actually connect with the person, if you do at all. We know that many people do not answer calls for numbers they do not recognize. We know this because we make thousands of these types of follow-up calls every week with our call team. Even with good intentions, consistently contacting missed calls is extremely difficult for any organization. And I can tell you that unequivocally, it is always far better to answer the incoming calls than to try to call back, because missing out on the initial incoming call might be your only chance to speak to that prospect. Then the last aspect is the general follow-up on a lead that you did speak to but did not close the deal. Even if you answered all incoming calls perfectly, which no one does, most leads do not turn into deals right away. They take consistent follow-up. How well do you follow up on deals in general, and for how long? Most investors do an okay job on the newest and hottest leads, but once that batch has gone through, they forget about long-term follow-ups on the cooler leads. But those cooler leads can often turn into deals later down the road. So if you add all this up, I'm telling you there's a huge amount of lost profits and wasted marketing money happening. It's absolutely insane to spend a ton of money on paid advertising and then lose half the leads simply because you don't do a good job of answering the calls because of all the factors that I just mentioned. So how do you fix that? It's real simple. Let REISmartCall take over answering incoming calls for you. We have a team of experienced agents who answer calls 14 hours a day, 6 days per week. These people have been speaking to real estate sellers for over 10 years. We only handle investor calls, no other industries. They can have an intelligent conversation with a prospect, determine if they are truly a qualified lead for you and someone that really wants to sell their house. The definition of a qualified lead is a person who has a house they want to sell and they want to talk to you about it and welcome your call back. So you only have to call the qualified leads and not waste your time with all the other noise. Our REISmartCall system works to successfully live answer and speak to about 78% of all incoming calls. For those that get missed or hang up, we capture the phone number, listen to the voicemail, transcribe the voicemail into a CRM, and then call everyone back up to 60 times or until you tell us to stop. Yes, that's right. We will call each individual person up to 60 times before we finally give up. And by the way, the follow-up system is not only for missed calls. We will follow up with every prospect so you can help to turn those cooler leads into hot deals long term. With our follow-up system, we call, send text, and physical letters if you opt in for the letter program. Our callbacks and follow-up on missed calls and hang-ups adds another roughly 10% of coverage to that 78% answer total, bringing our conversion rate to about 88% of all incoming calls. Remember, the typical investor only answers about 45% of the time and has a poor follow-up system, if any at all. Then there is one last aspect of this system that really puts the icing on the cake. I mentioned earlier that we enter all the leads into a CRM that we provide. That CRM allows us to track KPIs on the marketing results, and if you're mailing with us, we use that data to tweak your campaigns to increase results. Between the increased leads because we live answer and follow up at a better rate than you can likely do it yourself, and our KPI tracking that will help us optimize results in general, the combination is highly effective. We consistently see clients more than doubling their closed deal results by simply allowing us to answer incoming calls. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that this has to be really expensive, and that's where you're wrong. We do all this for less than it would cost you for one low-paid full-time person and without all the management hassle that comes with employees. We have options as low as starting at $497 per month. Plus, even if the money was the same, our system will do a far better job at all levels than you will likely ever do yourself with your in-house people. And by the way, even if you did set up an in-house system to have the same 14-hour, 6-day coverage that we offer and are willing to absorb the added cost over what we charge, I am still betting that you'll still have many of the same challenges mentioned in the beginning of this video and would not get as good an overall conversion rate as what we deliver with our system. So let me ask you this. How many more deals would you close and how much more profit would you make if you could get 35 to 50% more leads on the same ad spend? How much is one deal worth to you? For many of you, the profit on one deal could pay for this service for an entire year. Let me put some numbers around this to really bring my point home. And I'll even round the answer rate up to 50%, which is more than we actually see in reality for investors who answer their own phones. If your direct mail or other lead generation ad spend is generating 100 calls per month in gross incoming calls, but you're only answering half of those incoming calls, you're actually getting only 50 leads to work with instead of 100. If your answer rate is 50% and our answer rate, including follow-up calls, is 88%, that means you would get 38 more leads for having us do that rather than trying to do it yourself. How much more money would you make if you got an extra 38 leads each month from the same ad spend? Do you think you could close one more deal with an extra 38 leads? I also estimate that our long-term follow-up service will deliver one extra deal every other month. That's an extra 6 deals per year. How much is that worth to you? Just to summarize, based on the example I just gave, that's an extra 18 deals per year using REISmartCall over what you would get trying to answer and follow up yourself. If you earn $20,000 on each deal, that's an extra $380,000 potential dollars in more profit each year. That is a massive potential upside. Even if you could cut those numbers in half, or in half again, it's still a no-brainer. I promise that if you sit down and do the math, you'll be shocked at how much meat you're leaving on the bone and how much money you're wasting on your ad spend due to poor handling of incoming calls. I'm telling you that you cannot afford not to use REISmartCall. But the good news is it only takes one call to fix all that. Just click on the link below and set up a free coaching call to see if REISmartCall can be the answer to a massive increase in profits going forward.